I got a call Saturday night at around 6:30 to tell me that the sailing yacht Ppalu was sinking. I immediately ran to the boat, gathered up pumps and gear, and proceeded to Simpson Bay to attempt to try and float it. Once we arrived, I jumped in the water, swam around trying to locate the hole in the starboard hull, to no avail. After searching through the boat inside and out and attempting to pump for an hour or two, we realized that we were making no way and that the hole was much bigger than we had originally anticipated.
I got the call from Randy West on Saturday evening about 8 o'clock. I then contacted Pete to meet me at the workshop here. We came over here and mobilized one of our 4-inch hydraulic pumps. As we arrived there, we met with the Coast Guard and Paulie. At that time, they had two 2-inch pumps. Even with all 3 pumps, there was still not enough water being displaced to float the boat.
Being it's at night, it's hard to evaluate how big the hole is, and being the pumps were not keeping up, and there was no lives being threatened, and the boat wasn't going anywhere, that we decided that we were going to wait the evening and in first light the next morning come and take a proper look at it, bring proper lift bags.
The rudder broke off, but that's okay. It was slamming pretty hard, and after that, it was. You could tell she wasn't sinking anymore. She's awash, so she's not going down any further. She's float bouncing off the bottom.
Stabilized it.
Yeah, so that's where she was in '78. So Ppalu, same hull.
Well, yeah.
She's already done this.
The Coast Guard came by twice last night, once at midnight and once at 3 a.m. just to check on us. I thought that was pretty cool of them to do that. We were sleeping out here. Came around with a big spotlight, searching. Made sure nobody was on the boat. I guess they didn't know we were here.
That's good.
Gave them a wave and all was good.
Long ago, I was living in Montauk in the winter and racing catamarans for Hawaiian Tropic in Daytona Beach, Florida, which where we're from. And I was sailing a 30-foot catamaran, Warrior it's called. I thought it was the biggest catamaran in the world at the time. We were the only sponsored sailors. We thought we were king. And the distributor for Hawaiian Tropic for the Caribbean happened to live on St Maarten and said, well, you should come down this winter, which was the winter of '77, and for the launching of this boat Ppalu, a 75-foot catamaran we're building. We're going 75 feet, that was huge. Peter built it in a shed on the beach, just down the beach from here. And he had then taken, remember the old galvanized pipes you do plumbing with in the old days, all linked together? He had done 2 lengths of that, the entire length of the boat, and then tied a Jacob's ladder underneath it. And what you do, you would bend down, pick up the galvanized pipe, and it came taut when your knees were about, 3-4 inches from being straight, and he'd go lift 200 people. And everybody just stand up, and the boat would come up this high off the ground, and he'd go, okay, he had a bullhorn. Okay, let's walk. And we'd walk, stop. And he'd stop, put it down. We'd all put it in, and he'd go, have a beer. So this took a couple hours, and we actually walked this boat all the way into the lagoon, all 200 people, carried in the lagoon until she was floating and went out. I remember Wilson McQueen, the famous diver who started Saba Deep and pioneered scuba diving in the Caribbean here. He was the first one on the boat. He swam out to get the anchor to it and put the anchor. He was actually the first one on the boat when it was floating. And I said to myself, when I saw how huge it was at the time probably, I know Woody Brown in Hawaii built an 80-foot dinner motor catamaran in the 50s, but it was probably the biggest sailing catamaran in the world, and we were impressed. And I said to myself, one day when I grow up, I'm going to buy that boat. And so that was my quest for the next 36 years. I kept thinking about Ppalu.
got a little further back, that's it.
The hull had actually buried a hole into the bottom of the sand. And with the boat bouncing, with the swells coming through, you couldn't really get your hand under there. You don't want to lose a finger. But from the inside, I could feel with my feet. Obviously, the visibility was terrible. It was very murky. I could tell that it was a lot bigger the next morning. So with that, no way the pumps are going to keep up, and we need to lift it. But being able to lift it in that shallow water is very difficult with these large pillow bags. So that's why we decided we put it on the inside, underneath the cabin, where it could get some pressure to lift it up.
This was in the middle of the Heineken regatta, so Randy was racing on Tribe. This was Saturday, race day, second day of the race. And so I was just hanging out on the boat in the afternoon, and I saw they went through the 3 o'clock bridge, so I hopped in the dinghy about a little after 4 and thought, well, I'll go over there and go pick them up, and we'll come back, have dinner. And so we hung out and talked to them for a bit and went to the store, picked up a nice piece of salmon to cook for dinner. And we're walking back from the store, and Randy's looking through, he could see from where we were walking that Ppalu had turned. It wasn't sitting right like we had left her. And so we're like, oh man. So anyway, we get in the dinghy and go back, get in on board, and the starboard side hull was already sinking, already underwater, all the way up to the steps coming up into the deck house. And so he got on the radio and called for the Coast Guard, and they responded very quickly. Our side is a port side, so all our clothes and everything were over here, so I started bagging everything up because I was kind of in a panic here, and he's nice, calm, cool, collective, which was good.
So that second bag's filling up now?
Not yet.
Okay, good.
We still have to tie it,
Oh, okay.
but it's almost ready to go.
Everywhere in the world, Ppalu went off and was Marc Pajot, the famous French sailor who was did head up the French 12-meter challenge all through the years of the America's Cup challenges on the 12 meters. That was Marc Pajot. This is his first boat. It was sponsored by Paul Ricard, thanks to Eric Tabarly, who was the epitome of sailing in France. He picked this boat, chartered it, and had it for to compete in the 1978 Route de Rome.
And he tried to sink the boat too, didn't he?
Well, it did hit something. Same hull. He hit something. He did sink the boat. Hit something. That same hull was underwater. They towed it 200 and some miles with a tug all the way to the beach.
With the one hull completely submerged?
Just like it was.
Just like us, we did the other Sunday.
No airbags. It was completely submerged. Like one hull was a submarine.
Did he keep the sails up because he was still racing?
But anyway, that's things like that made it famous. She got her name out, and the 78 Route de Rome was when multi-hulls came of their own. A small trimaran Olympus Photo beat a giant monohull, Quitar 5 or Quitar 6, and that changed the whole world as far as ocean racing. Now went from the fastest boats across the Atlantic were no longer giant Greyhounds of the Sea or giant ultralight monohulls that were 90 feet long and 10 feet wide. All of a sudden now they were these 75-foot cat. Ppalu, which is Paul Ricard, was leading the whole fleet by 150 miles in 24 hours. That was unheard of in those days.
Yo!
Yeah. So as she bounces, take up the slack in the rope.
Okay.
There we go. Slowly coming up. We got airbags under it now. We're slowly lifting it up. Got the pump going. I want to thank you guys for checking on us all night. Kept my wife happy, man. I'll take you guys all out to dinner when I'm done.
That's okay.
I'm serious. I appreciate it very much. Tell Chief thank you. Unless you're the chief.
I wish.
Cheers, huh? Thank you very much again. Those guys are great, man. Oh yeah, water's going down. Water's going down. Yeah, but it's coming up now. We got 2 bags down, and it seems one bag is covering the hole, closing up the hole where we cracked it against the rock. And so she's slowly coming up. That's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big rock right here.
That's what did it. That big rock right there. Yeah. It's only draw 3 feet. And it's at 2.5, I guess. He's gonna put on another pump because 2 is better than 1. And it's coming up. See the airbag, the rope has closed the hole. The piece of wood that was open is closed. So we might be getting ahead of it here in a short.
She seems to be coming up at the moment.
I give it, let it pump and see what happens.
You want to maybe jump inside here and feel around a bit. Let me get this pump running, you take a break.
Yeah, it's right there. Do I put gas in?
Yeah.
He's coming up quicker. Quicker is good. I never salvaged a boat before. Oh no, 68 in the Bahamas on a freighter that went aground on James Point. Salvaged a Cadillac off the deck. Wasn't anything like this.
I'll tell you why. Tell you why I have to save it. Because it was Peter Spronk's glory. This was the baddest, beautiful, most stunning boat in the world at the time. I went out to Hawaii in '80 and sailed on the boats out there with Rudy Choi and Woody Brown. I go, you guys have nothing. You should see the boats we're building in the West Indies. And they were beautiful. They had the clipper bows, all the overhang. The transom on this boat's this big. It's a little, and 75 feet long. It's all lap straight wood. First of the West System boats, because Mahu was resourcing on glue. First of the West System boats, this was it. This was, and in the beginning, because I knew the Goujon, I still do, except one of them just died, but they said, oh, you can't do it in the tropics. You have to have a temperature-controlled environment. And Peter proved them wrong. He built with the West System epoxy in the shed at Lancier, in the tropics, wet, rain, hot, everything, and the boats are still sailing to this day. If they're not sunk from a hurricane or someone running into them, if they were just alive and well, they're still alive and well. And this one was getting to where it was going to be probably the first just to rot away and die instead of being destroyed in a storm. And it just needed to be saved. And because of, I just needed to save it. Me being there at that time and everybody being just amazed at the beauty and the how fast it was. No boats did 25 knots at the time. You do 18 and you were changing your pants. This thing would just effortlessly do 25 knots. You had 6 cabins. You take all your friends. It was just it was a Peter Spronk statement. Peter Spronk's dead now, and I just wanted to save it for him and for St Maarten. I mean, this is what St Maarten did in its day. I mean, everybody goes to St Maarten, it's a tourist place. It used to be the catamaran center for the world. For the world. This beat all of Phil Weld's trimarans, all of the French boats. This was the fastest boat in the world at the time, in the 70s. And now it turns into all these years a classic boat. It's a classic catamaran. Although, I mean, multi-hulls are finally coming to where they're getting old enough to be called classics. And if there is one, this is it. And that's why I wanted to save it. What a mess. The water's going down quickly. That's a good sign. Is that a piece of my boat right there? There's like a plank of my boat there. If the hole's that big, that's a big hole. It's a big piece.
Let's hope that's not from your boat.
I'm sure it is. Ah, grab that piece of wood. Yeah, but it's, it is.
No, look at the screw in it.
That's it.
Huh? You got screws in your boat?
Originally, yeah. Fuck. There's no paint on it. Could be an outer skin. And the inside's still intact. Could be.
found the hole, and it's big.
Okay. How do we close it?
We don't.
Oh.
You can't work there. And these pumps aren't actually doing anything at the moment.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to put another lift bag in, and I'm most probably going to pump that back compartment, because that compartment there's a bulkhead.
Yeah.
I'll pump that, and then we'll see how much buoyancy we've created. The tower as is.
Okay.
The hull was burrowed in the sand, so there was no ways from the outside to determine where the holes are.
Oh yeah, that's a big hole.
The only time we could really determine where the holes were was as soon as we got a couple of lift bags up and the boat was actually floating off the bottom, that we went and looked and actually saw that the whole bottom was ripped open. I don't believe we're doing anything with the pumping.
No, it's a big hole. Real big hole, probably this big.
And then we determined that it would have been impossible to patch the boat there, and that the only option would be is to take a chance and tow the boat with the lift bags on and take it to Bobby's Marina.
I'd like for you to go get the dinghy and come up and follow along.
And just follow behind?
Yeah, in case we need you.
Which is a bit of a risky endeavor, because these lift bags quite often sometimes could fail. You pop a valve, and then you're in a lot of trouble, because the boat could potentially sink.
So Heineken regatta, and the boat sinking right in the channel there could have been it was a very scary moment.
Really?
Very scary moment.
From the word go to the word end, excellent teamwork from everybody. Everybody assisted and helped, and it went very smooth. We did it in no time, and the boat was at Bobby's Marina, where Jeff from the marina managed to pull the boat out Sunday morning for us and put the boat on land.
By noon, we were hauled out in Bobby's Marina, where we're sitting now. When I saw that, because we didn't actually know what damage there was until it was hauled out in the slings. And Randy was still up on top, and I was below because I rode behind in the dinghy. And I was looking at the damage and just, you know, saw this big hole in the hull and said to him, you know, it's not pretty. Not pretty. Whole bottom.
Yep, whole bottom. Yep, like from
there to
70% of it.
well, no, not that, like 30%, 40%. Half of the bottom has just been totally ripped out. I mean, it was hard because we just spent, you know, had the boat in St. Kitts for 7 months and just did all this work. We were just ready to make our way back to Florida for the summer and go on a nice little, take a couple months, go through the BVIs in the Bahamas, and so here we are, back in the boatyard.
No. Oh. Basically 20 feet of bottom has to be done, 3 strakes, stringers. Luckily there is a God because the keel didn't break. There are some really great people on this island. I mean, Dion came out and saved the boat from sailing. I have a friend of mine, Felix, a Swedish guy. I had helped him out in St. Bart's, and he just painted that whole part of the hull. So there's all those kinds of people who are helping me out. But it's tough. It's going to be expensive, and I can't afford another refit. And well, it's just got to be done. I'm just going to have to figure out how to resource it. I'm going to have to figure out how to get it. I hope to get some guys from the yard here who will, some good woodworkers who can plank the bottom back up, because it's not that big of a job, the planking part. It's just, I just did it to the rest of the boat. You know, I just finished doing all that because the rest of the boat was really bad. So I don't know if my heart's into it. I get a bit depressed, but she's saving me, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, we're not going to let it get the best of us.
Yeah, we're not going to let it
It's
get
just
the
hard
best.
after, you know, when we walked out of the boatyard, got out of that boatyard in St. Kitts, you know, after such a long time. I still remember the last day I was finished painting and everything, and I remember how good it felt just to leave and say, we're done with all the heavy work, we're done in the boatyard. So that's, you know, really hard to go back and even think about pulling everything out and doing all that epoxy, you know, wood. I mean, it's just, to go through all that again is, it's hard
Tough
to imagine.
But it's got to be done. And luckily, it didn't get to the electrical panel. It just took out the starter batteries, not the house batteries, but they're all discharged and all the ends are up. So there's all kinds of wiring that has to be done, painting that has to be done, just to get it back to the point of where it was when we started this.
Before we sunk.
Yeah, before we, I hate to say that word, it hurts. Before this tragedy happened. But that's where we're at now, so that's where we're at now. We're in this together. Don't forget it.